Hi, this is Cheryl St.Pierre of Majestic Wire Artworks. This is a Beebeecraft tutorial made to use these beautiful rainbow electroplated 16mm crystals that I got in my last package. And I'm calling this the Delight Swirl pendant. And I want to demonstrate how it hangs on a chain. So I'm going to quickly put a chain in it and just show you. Okay, so see the bail is here and this top swirl is much higher, and that just adds just some uniqueness to it. And what I'm going to attempt to do in this video is show you precisely how to make these exact swirls. So I will be referring back and forth to these swirls just to try and create the exact pattern all over again. And I just wanted you to see the beauty of this crystal. Do you see that pinky purple that shows up? Isn't that gorgeous? And on the back, this is where all the electroplating was done. And it kind of has a yellowy green look to it. But this is the side I like. And I'm accenting it with 3 rondelles. Now Beebeecraft calls it rainbow electroplate. And when I bought these rondelles, it was called colorized. So you might be able to find that same color if they don't have, you can't find the rondelles with Beebeecraft, because I never really looked. I got these elsewhere and they were just called colorized. So of course you could put whichever accent beads you would choose to bring out the beauty of the pendant. So the next thing I wanted to discuss was the weaving. Now this is like I call my 1, 2, 3 weave, which I did with the Tier de Luna tutorial, which was the last Beebeecraft tutorial I did. But this one I needed the wires that are spread out more for the curve to be on the opposite end of things. So this is the 1, 2, 3 weave reversed. So I guess I'll call it the reverse 1, 2, 3, and I'll be teaching that in this video. It's the first time I'm using it, so it was important because I wanted the weaving to be on the right hand side in this pendant. So let's begin with the supplies that you'll need. You will need 3 13-inch pieces of 20 gauge wire, so that's 32.5 centimeters long, and it's 0.8 millimeters is the same as 20 gauge. And you will need 4 feet of 28 gauge, which is approximately 120 centimeters, and the gauge measures at 0.32 millimeters. And you will need to do weaving of 1 3/4 inches long, which is 4.4 centimeters. And you will need your 16mm Beebeecraft bead. I will give the link in the description. I just wanted to show you that you get just a humongous strand of these beads, and like they're just gorgeous. So it's well worth it. You will need to order 4mm rondelles with the same color if you're doing precisely what I am doing. And you will need your chain nose pliers, your round nose pliers, your flush cutters, excuse me, and a ruler just for measuring the lengths of everything. I probably won't be using the ruler at all in the tutorial, but to make it, you will need to just measure things to be where you want to be. Okay, so let's start with demonstrating the weave. So I'm just using 3 lengths, shorter lengths and shorter weaving wire, just so I'm not fighting with the camera. And I'm going to lasso them together first, but I also want to mention that you're going to need to start working about 3 inches from the end. And so you're going to start with placing your wire over top with a little bit of a tail, wrapping it around. I'm just trying to, I'm looking at my camera, making sure I'm in screen, and then I kind of missed what I was doing. So then you just push that together, and then introduce the next wire, the next core wire, and wrap around it. And I like to graduate my wire lengths just a little bit so it's easy for me to visually see what order they're in. And push that wire over and introduce your last wire. And we could do several patterns first before we do the measuring from the end, because we can slide it at first, afterwards. With this weave, it's harder to slide, so I recommend having it shortly after starting to do your weaving in position, just because you tend to weave tighter with this one. So what I'll need you to do is, now that you've got them all lassoed together, is we're going to go all the way under all 3 wires, come up from the top. And now with the 1, 2, 3, I would normally wrap around the top wire, wire 1, but I am doing the reverse, and I'm going to go between the bottom 2 wires, wire 2 and 3, like this. Okay, and then I'm coming up between the top 2 wires. So the first one, I am just going over top of the top 2 wires instead of just the first one. Now I'm going over the bottom 2 wires, and I'm going to come go underneath, come up between the bottom 2 wires, and then it's going to have 2 wraps around the bottom wire, while it has 1 wrap around the top wire, which will give the space, extra space between the top 2 wires. I mean on the top wire instead of the bottom wire. Okay, so now I'm coming up under all 3 wires, holding it tight, getting the band, letting it go, and now going down between the bottom 2 wires, wire 2 and 3, coming up between the top 2 wires, going over the bottom 2 wires, underneath, and then wrapping once around the bottom wire. Okay, so it's gonna look, I've got it loose here, but it's gonna look like this. Okay, now normally I have to cinch it up a lot like this, but with this weave you kind of can do it without cinching up much at all if you do a certain technique. Now I'm going to just show it to you, and it's kind of hard getting it all in screen what I'm doing, but I'm going to try. So I'm coming up all around 3, going over top of the top 2 wires, coming down between the bottom 2 wires, and then coming up between the top 2 wires. And what I mean at this point is I am now going to snug it up nice and tight, and that is going to cinch it all up with each time we do it. And now I'm going to go over the bottom 2 wires, coming up between the bottom 2 wires, and I'm cinching it up again by tugging on the wire right there. Now that can cause discomfort on your fingers, and you might want to tape your fingers because you can get blisters if you do a lot of this. You can give yourself breaks so that you don't, or you can do it all at once with tape on your fingers. And so I'm doing another time. I'm up, I came underneath all 3 wires, going over top of 2 wires, going down between the bottom 2 wires. And my wires are moving on me. I'm coming up between the top 2 wires, and I'm tugging it, cinching it up. And now I'm going to go around the bottom wire and cinch it up again. And when it does that, it makes it pretty tight. So with this weave, if you do it that way, you can go every 10, I'd say for sure 10 patterns before you cinch it up with your pliers, like this. So it's a lot easy. It's a lot faster to work up, actually. Once you get your method down, once you get yourself synchronized, it's actually very quick to work up. Okay, so that's it. I have my weaving done ahead of time, and I'm going to show you something that happened to me when I had my weaving. On my roll, my weaving wire must have had one part where it was tarnished, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4 little spots where it's tarnished. So you know, this one I would not want to see this first one, I didn't have that issue, and I could lacquer it to keep it shiny. This one, I am definitely going to antique it to hide that because it looks funny. So I just wanted to just show you that, you know, we all have little issues and little problems, and that's always good to know. This is raw copper, and you know, sometimes you just have those issues. My spool of my 28 gauge is almost empty. It's getting older, and I don't see the tarnishing on it, but it's obviously there because it showed up on here. And if you really want to make sure, if you're trying to keep it shiny and you're planning on lacquering it, you might want to take a buff cloth or something and buff it prior to weaving it, because you're only using a 4-foot length of this. It would be fairly quick to do. And you know, just giving you that info because it definitely shows up, and I just wanted you to know. Okay, so the next step to do after you've gotten your practiced your weaving and you're comfortable with it is weave about 1 3/4 inches of length. Then I want you to snip whatever's left over about 1/2 inch to 1 inch long, just to get it out of your way. Okay, and the weaving, we want it with where it has the spaces to be on the upside. Okay, that's why we did this weave. And I want you to take your top wire. Oh, I guess we do, before we do anything more, we do want to snip this wire off right up to the weaving, like that. And you could crimp it down. Okay, and the next thing you do is take this top core wire and bend it straight up, like that. And put on your bead, your 16mm bead. So the next thing you're going to need is to take your round nose pliers And we're going to make our bail next. And we want enough wrapping. Excuse me. Oh, not sure why I'm yawning. Maybe it's the talking. We want it to have enough room to have the weave wrap around it, and a smidge more just for these room for these wires. Okay, so what I did with my pliers, which these are Beebeecraft pliers, which the link will be in the description too, is I went as close to the bead as I could and then bent it, and it seemed to be perfect. Now what I could do, if you're interested, is I could measure that in millimeters as what that worked out to, and it's approximately 6 millimeters. So a bend after 6 millimeters. And then you're going to take and make your bail by wrapping around the largest part of your pliers 2 times, which can be awkward doing this, but just do the best you can. I know it's awkward for me, and being on camera, it's even more awkward. I just need to move everything out of my way. Take my pliers out when I need to, and wrap some more. Okay, so there, I've got that done. That's what we want. So that's what it looks like from the side. And now I'm going to wrap as best I can right down to the bead to lock the bead in place. And also make the neck of the bail stronger. So, I mean, it's going to be covered, so it doesn't have to be neat, but when it's neat, it's stronger. So if you go, it tends to go off because it's such an awkward place to wrap. Just cinch it up as best you can whenever it needs it. And mine needed it right away, and I'm sure it's going to need it more than once because my last one did. Just getting in there can be challenging. One thing I didn't discuss is I recommend using copper for this pendant. If you want, I wouldn't recommend soft sterling silver because I think the swirls would bend easier on soft sterling silver, because I've made a necklace before with swirls, and soft, I don't know how to explain it, but sterling silver just is so much different than copper. So if you wanted the silver color, I recommend getting the Beebeecraft wire, their enamel plated wire that I've shown in other videos, and because that would have very similar properties to this. See, this is, I just wanted to demonstrate. You might think that this is feeble or flimsy, but it's not. The way I did the swirls, the way I thought of making it strong as possible, it's actually very sturdy. I can't really pull it. I can't really push it. I mean, if I really, really wanted to be aggressive with it, of course I could wreck it, but you can wreck any jewelry doing that. And when you're doing this type of work, it's considered artistry, so it should be handled with care. But I just wanted you to know that it's very sturdy. And copper is the best thing for making it sturdy, because just the properties of the copper. So you could use half hard sterling silver, but it wouldn't swirl as easy. You would get kinks. So sterling silver in this necklace is very problematic. So just a heads up on that. Sorry for the interruption, but I just thought it was important to share that. Okay, so I think I've got enough done there, and I like this part this end of the bale better than this end of the bale, I'm gonna snip this wire off. So it's got a bit of waste here, but that's okay. It just made it easier to make. And I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, and I'm just gonna twist this around so that the nicer side of the bale is facing forward, because you do see the bale, you really do. So you want it to look neat. So that looks neat. Okay? Now the next thing I want you to do is you're going to support your bead and your weave, and we're going to hug this weave around the bead and try to keep it flat. And I'm just moving that out of the way to stay in focus. Okay. And it can be challenging. We want it to be nice and round. And I'm just gently, oops, sorry. See how it's curved on me there? I'm just gonna level it out. And I'm barely touching it with the pliers. It's just the pliers can get at it better than my fingers can. Okay, so that looks pretty good. It's not perfect, because you can see right here it's got a bit of a kink look to it. My other one's got that too, I think. It's just gonna happen, but it's, you know what, it's not that noticeable, and you just work with it. So now the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna wrap this around the base of the bale. And then this is what it looks like at the back. We're going to snip it about here because we want it to touch up with the back of the other weaving. And if any of your weaving unravels a tiny bit, it usually doesn't. If it does, it's very minute. Okay, so sorry, my phone's. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to take my pliers and I'm going to bend it to touch the weave. And see, it didn't unravel at all. But if it does, don't worry about it at this point. I want you to do this next step first. I want you to make it touch the weave like this. Then I want you to go in and snip off anything that would have unraveled. And then once it touches, it can't unravel anymore because it's locked into place. Now, I just wanted to show you from the front. It ended up, oh, maybe it isn't. I thought it was. I thought this, and if yours is, I'm going to give you instructions of what to do. If this ends up being taller than the weave, you just take your pliers, a flat point, and push it down. But I guess it wasn't. Okay, so that's what it looks like at this point. And so then the next thing we're going to do is make a swirl right here. And it's not going to be very big, just a little one. And we are going counterclockwise. Okay? So we're just going to take this wire and take it immediately down and do a little swirl right there, fairly tight. And if you want me to measure how small it is, I can do that for you. Yours doesn't have to be exact, but it's always good to know that you're in the ballpark, right? So the outside of the two wires on the swirls is approximately 4 millimeters. The inside is approximately 2 millimeters. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is, if you notice, now we're gonna go and make another counterclockwise swirl, but I've done it so that I have airspace in there. So what I did really was I made a loop with one wire first and then did the other wire, and so I'm going to demonstrate that. So I've got the pendant upside down. I am taking the top wire when the pendant's upside down and make the loop first. And this loop is going to be maybe a smidgen bigger. So it's going to look like a backwards C, or actually, you know, it looks like a handwritten J. And coming around like that. And now, okay, now I have the other wire in my hand and I'm bending it with pressure, and I want it to have a little bit, here, getting the screen, a little bit of space there. Sorry, it's so hard to keep in screen and see what I'm doing at the same time. Okay, so I've got it like that. That's what I wanted. And now I'm going to hold it down and I'm going to make it follow the other wire. Okay, so let's compare. See how we did. Okay. That's hard to do, isn't it? To show it on. I'd say that's pretty close. Okay. So now it's time to go grab one of my little rondelles. And I haven't taken them out yet, so I'm going to do that right now. Get 3 of them ready. Okay, so this is the front of the pendant and it's upright. We want the bead to be on the left wire. So that's what I'm doing. I'm putting the bead on the left wire. Okay, and we need to pull this wire a little bit to the left, just so that the bead slides a bit and it slid back up. So I'm actually gonna pull that wire to the left so that the bead will sit there. And let's see, how did I do that? Yep, okay. So the next thing I did is I placed the bead about there. So it's got a little bit of space, but not too much there. And now I'm going to flip it around, hold the bead in place, and make the wire that the bead is on wrap around itself. Okay, so it's like this. And now, if you can see, now I make the other wire wrap around it too. But because it's going around the bead, it's automatically going to have a space in it. So we just want it to be nice and round. So I'm pulling it with tension to be nice and round. So it looks like that. Okay, so this is the bead wire. This is the other wire. And now I'm going to make it come up with the other wire now. Okay. So it's like that. And then we go straight up. Oops. I'm going to push it like that. So then the next thing we want to do is, I'm double checking here. We want the next swirl to go in the opposite direction. And so at this point, we're covering up the bead. So I'm just going to pull it out a little bit like that. And the other one, now we want to bead on the right hand wire. So go ahead and put a bead on the right hand wire. That's the wire closest to the 16mm bead. And we're going to put a 4mm rondelle on that. And so because of the way it was going, I actually pulled this wire more to the left and then push that wire down there. And so this might be a little bit tricky for you, but now I'm going to take my left wire and wrap around the bead while this wire stays straight. So I'm going to just do that right now. I hope I'm in focus there. So that was a clockwise wrap. Do you see how I did that? Okay, so it's rather right, and it's supposed to be, because if you see on this one, it's rather right. And now I'm going to take this wire and go to the right as well and make a distance. See how I've got a distance in there? And come up to the left. So like that. So it's kind of like an echo. Okay, and it automatically went over the bead. And now I'm going to take this and I'm going to bend it out like that, because we don't want it covering the bead a lot. Okay, so now I'm going to take this and I'm going to curve it up a little bit like that. And the next step is to put a bead. Again, this is going to be clockwise curl. We're going to put a bead on the right hand wire again, but we're going to wrap it like the lower rondelle. So the right wire with the bead. Okay, like that. With itself. And it's going to go over top of this swirl a little bit, and that's what we want, so it's okay. And whoops, bumped the camera. And we're going to try and make it a little bit on the tight side, like this. And I'm just going to double check how I did this. Okay, yep. We're going to go tightly because we're actually almost going to do another loop over top, because if you see this, it went once and then it's twice. Okay, so well, it is twice, 1.5 times. Okay, so now we're gonna do like this, and now we want a space. We want to put that little space in there. So we're going to make it not quite echo as much, but have a space like that. And now we're going to have it go this way. So it's almost going to go level with the weave. And I'm just gonna bend this out a little bit. It's going to be slightly different, but similar. I'm going to give it more space by pushing that back. And pushing that down. Okay. And I'm going to stretch that around a little bit. Okay. So now I've got that there. And now I'm going to do a tiny swirl, which is counterclockwise, beside the bail. So about there. And I'm doing both of them at the same time. And see how I'm bending it to be kind of like a backwards S. That's what we're doing. And it's a finger swirl for sure. And it's nice and small, much like we did on the bottom here. And now we're going to do another swirl around here. Okay, so there's our tiny swirl, and now we're spreading them apart, and we want it right beside the bail and over above it. Okay, so I'm just pulling that there. Okay, so nice. I'm going to take one wire at a time and make a nice swirl. Okay, so I came down. Yep, that's where I want it. I came down and to meet up with the other one. And now I'm going to take this one and do a larger echo of that. Put the space in there. And I'm using tension to get the form. Okay. So you don't want it too big. Okay. And now we're going to manipulate the wires, the loops, to fit into place. So everyone's going to be a little bit different, but it also is going to be very similar, and they're all going to be pretty. So I'm going to hold this swirl because it's perfect and bring this up to where the bail is. And I'm going to do the same with the second wire. And then when we lock it around the bail, it's going to give this sturdiness and strength. And because we did different, we went back and forth with our swirls and they're overlapping each other, it's giving it strength. Okay, so now I've got it where I want it. It's right beside the bail. I'm going to hold it in place and I'm going to bend this around the bail. Like this. This is the back now. And then I'm going to trim it and I'm going to tuck it in so that it's nice and sturdy. So I'm going to trim it about there because we kind of want it almost to touch itself, just like the weave did. Okay, so you see how it's touching there? Okay, and then it moved with the bail being in the middle there. I'm just pulling it. I supported it when I pulled it, and I pulled it over. And now it's not precisely, but it's pretty close, and it's just as pretty. So they're all similar and different. And that's the Delight Swirl Pendant. Thank you, Beebeecraft, for giving me the inspiration to do these pendants with your gorgeous beads. They're wonderful. Okay, thank you for joining me in this video. Check out the links. Check out my memberships that you can join. And God bless. Take care. We'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.